Imagine waking up one day to find out your entire neighborhood is about to be bulldozed because some guy decided the city needs a glow-up. Well, that's exactly what happened in 19th century Paris when Baron Georges Eugene Haussmann got to work. Paris before Haussmann? A medieval maze of narrow, filthy streets, disease outbreaks, and traffic jams caused by, wait for it, horse carts. Napoleon III had seen enough and gave Haussmann one job: fix it. And Haussmann? He didn't just fix Paris, he reinvented it. Over 17 years, he tore down thousands of buildings, widened streets into massive boulevards, and created parks, squares, and grand avenues that would make any modern city planner weep with envy. He introduced a sewer system that finally got rid of the city's, let's just say, natural aroma, and made sure the new buildings followed a uniform design, giving Paris that elegant, postcard-perfect look we all know today. But Haussmann's vision came at a cost. Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly the working class, were kicked out of their homes as their neighborhoods were demolished. Critics called him a dictator, and eventually, he was fired. Yet, love him or hate him, Haussmann made Paris Paris. Those charming boulevards, symmetrical buildings, and stunning views? They wouldn't exist without him. So next time you sip overpriced coffee at a Parisian cafe, just remember, you have Haussmann to thank for the view. Imagine looking at a bustling city and thinking to yourself, you know what would make this better? Giant concrete towers and an insane amount of symmetry. That's exactly what Corbusier, one of the most controversial urban planners ever, had in mind. Born in 1887, this Swiss-French architect wasn't interested in cute little streets or charming old buildings. Nope. He wanted cities to function like machines, efficient, organized, and built for the modern world. His grand vision? The Radiant City is a futuristic utopia where people would live in sleek high-rises surrounded by green spaces, all perfectly planned and separated by function. No clutter, no chaos, just pure geometric order. Sounds great, right? Well, not so fast. His ideas, while groundbreaking, were also a little terrifying. His vision for Paris? Flatten it. Seriously, he wanted to demolish much of the historic city center and replace it with uniform 60-story towers. Thankfully, that never happened. But his ideas weren't just fantasy. His love for concrete, minimalism, and brutal efficiency influenced city planning worldwide. You can see traces of his work in Brasilia, Chandigarh, and even those quote-unquote cookie-cutter apartment blocks that pop up in cities everywhere. Was he a genius or a madman? Depends on who you ask. But one thing's for sure, Le Corbusier didn't just dream of the future, he designed it. Suppose a bunch of men in suits decide that neighborhoods with actual people, character, and history should be torn down to make way for lifeless highways and soulless towers. Enter Jane Jacobs, the woman who took one look at the nonsense and said, yeah, no. Jacobs wasn't a trained urban planner. She was a journalist and an activist who simply understood what made cities work. She believed cities weren't meant to be cold, sterile grids, but living, breathing communities filled with diverse people, businesses, and cultures. And when powerful developers tried to bulldoze these communities in the name of progress, she fought back. Her biggest battle? New York in the 1960s. The infamous Robert Moses wanted to ram a massive highway through Greenwich Village, wiping out historic streets and local businesses. Jacobs, leading a group of determined residents, stopped him in his tracks. She organized protests, wrote petitions, and even got arrested, but she won. Her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, became a Bible for urban planning, championing walkable neighborhoods, mixed-use development, and vibrant street life over cold, lifeless planning. Today, her ideas shape cities worldwide, from Toronto to Copenhagen. While big shot planners wanted to turn cities into soulless machines, Jane Jacobs reminded the world that people, not cars or skyscrapers, are what makes a city truly great. Imagine living in a city where the air is thick with smog, the streets are overcrowded, and the only greenery you see is a sad little weed growing between the cracks in the pavement. That was the reality of industrial cities in the late 19th century. Gross, depressing, and in desperate need of a makeover. Enter Ebenezer Howard, the guy who took one look at this urban chaos and said, what if we just built cities better? Howard's grand idea? Garden cities. He believed the perfect city was a mix of urban convenience and rural tranquility, where people could have jobs, nice homes, and plenty of fresh air without feeling like they were trapped in a never-ending factory town. His vision included self-sufficient communities with parks, homes, and industries all in balance, connected by railways instead of polluted streets. Basically, he wanted to give cities a much-needed detox. His book, Garden Cities of Tomorrow, 1898, laid out his master plan. And it wasn't just theory, he actually built two of them, Letchworth and Welwyn Garden City in England. These places became the blueprint for modern suburban planning and influenced everything from eco-friendly developments to today's new urbanism movement. Did his dream completely come true? Not exactly. Suburbs today are more strip malls than green utopias. But without Ebenezer Howard, we'd have never even tried to build cities that weren't just smoky, overcrowded nightmares. So yeah, the dude deserves some credit. What if your city had a master plan so good it still shaped its skyline over a century later? Enter Daniel Burnham, the man who looked at the chaos of 19th century cities and said, "Nope, we're fixing this." Burnham wasn't just an architect, he was a visionary who believed that cities should be grand, organized, and actually pleasant to live in, which was a radical thought back then. His most famous project, the 1909 Plan of Chicago. At a time when Chicago was a messy tangle of industry, overcrowded streets, and pollution, Burnham dreamed of wide boulevards, green parks, stunning architecture, and a lakefront that belonged to the people instead of the factories. The result? He transformed Chicago into one of the most beautiful and planned cities in the world. But he wasn't just a Chicago guy. Burnham helped design Washington, D.C.'s Union Station, San Francisco's city plan, and even spearheaded the legendary 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. That event alone made city planning look like an art form, proving that urban spaces could be both functional and breathtaking. His motto? Make no little plans. And he didn't. His ideas shaped modern urban planning, proving that cities didn't have to be ugly, cramped, or chaotic. Today, every time you walk down a well-planned avenue or relax in a waterfront park, you've got Burnham to thank. Ever wonder who made cities actually livable instead of just endless blocks of concrete and chaos? Meet Frederick Law Olmsted, the guy who basically invented the idea of urban parks. Before him, cities were just industrial nightmares, dirty, overcrowded, and completely lacking in green space. Olmsted looked at this and said, yeah, no, people need some trees. His most legendary creation was Central Park in New York City. In the 1850s, he and his partner, Calvert Vaux, designed a massive, breathtaking park in the middle of Manhattan, a place where people could escape the noise, breathe some fresh air, and, not lose their minds in city madness. But Olmsted didn't stop there. He designed parks, parkways, and green spaces all over America, from Boston's Emerald Necklace to Chicago's Jackson Park and even parts of the U.S. Capitol grounds. He believed that parks weren't just for decoration, they were essential for public health, happiness, and social harmony. And here's something interesting. Olmsted's parks weren't just about tossing in some grass and benches. He carefully designed them to feel natural as they had always been there, with winding paths, scenic views, and open meadows. Today, every time you take a peaceful walk in an urban park, take a picnic under a big shady tree, or just escape the concrete jungle for a minute, you're living in Olmsted's vision. Ever walked through a city and thought, where the heck am I? That confusion is exactly what Kevin Lynch wanted to fix. As an urban planner and author, Lynch spent his career studying how people experience and navigate cities, not just how they look on a map, but how they actually feel when you're walking through them. His groundbreaking book, The Image of the City, 1960, introduced the idea that a well-designed city should be legible, meaning that people should instinctively know where they are and where they're going without pulling out a map every 2 seconds. Lynch broke this down into 5 key elements that shape how we mentally map a city. First, paths, the streets, sidewalks, and routes we use every day. Then, edges, which act as barriers or boundaries, like rivers, highways, or walls. Districts help divide the city into recognizable areas, like a business district or a historic neighborhood. Nodes are major intersections of plazas where people naturally gather. And finally, landmarks. Those big, unique structures, think the Empire State Building or the Eiffel Tower, that help you instantly place yourself. His work changed the way urban planners design cities, emphasizing walkability, orientation, and emotional connection. Ever wonder why some cities feel easy to explore, while others leave you hopelessly lost? That's Lynch's influence in action. His ideas are still shaping urban design today, making sure cities are not just functional, but also intuitive and enjoyable to navigate. So next time you instinctively know your way through a city, thank Kevin Lynch. What if cities were designed for people instead of cars? That's the question Jan Gehl has spent his career answering. While many urban planners focused on highways, skyscrapers, and massive infrastructure projects, Gehl looked at something far more basic: how people actually move, interact, and live in a city. A Danish architect and urban planner, Gehl pioneered the idea of human-centered design, where cities are built to encourage walking, biking, and public spaces instead of just endless roads and parking lots. He believed that cities should feel welcoming and vibrant, not like giant concrete jungles. His philosophy? If you design for cars, you get traffic. If you design for people, you get life. Copenhagen, his hometown, became his testing ground. Thanks to Gehl's influence, the city transformed into one of the most bike-friendly places in the world, with pedestrian-only streets, wide sidewalks, and outdoor cafes replacing car-filled roads. His ideas didn't just stay in Denmark. Cities like New York, Melbourne, and Moscow have all used his strategies to reclaim public spaces from cars and give them back to the people. Gehl's work proves that a great city isn't measured by how fast cars can move, but by how enjoyable it is for people to walk, sit, and simply exist. In an era where urban life often feels rushed and disconnected, his ideas remind us that the best cities aren't just built, they're lived in. Which urban planner story inspired you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know if you'd like to see more stories of influential figures in urban planning. Join us next time as we explore the remarkable stories of urban planners, because every city has a story worth telling.